Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to respond briefly to the budget put forward here today. And I, too, am joined by incredibly important people in my life, powerful, important women in my life, my wife, my mum, and my mother-in-law. So thank you for being here today as well. The budget... The budget I'm prepared to respond to is one that I think is a great disappointment to the people of our province. A government that boasts of the best days of prosperity, apparent record growth, and a resource boom. But for everyday families, it's an austerity budget, full of cuts that reach directly into the pockets of seniors, families, and students.
Hear, hear.
For many of the province's classrooms, it's an austerity budget that asks them to make do with less. These cuts will result in growing pressures in every household. They mean unmet needs in housing and infrastructure. These cuts mean that too many people will be left behind. And while these cuts are being exacted, the government moves forward with its plan to add 3 more politicians. While seniors are being asked to reach deep into their pockets for an extra $5 for each and every prescription that they need each and every month, costing seniors hundreds of dollars annually, the budget manages to find room for a new statue at the legislature. And while 500 frontline workers who deliver services are cut in this budget, not one job cut is in the Premier's Executive Council offices. It just doesn't add up.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, it's not exactly what voters bargained for, and it's not what people expected or were promised. Government preached prosperity, but today they're delivering austerity for everyday families. This budget isn't what people think of when they think of prosperity. Saying we can no longer afford 5 members on northern firefighting teams is not what Saskatchewan people think of when they think of prosperity. Saying that seniors need to dig deeper and peel off a few more dollars when they need an ambulance, Mr. Speaker, that's not what people think of when they think of prosperity. Telling seniors in long-term care that an extra $240 a year needs to come out of their pockets for hygiene supplies, that's not what people think of as a prosperous province. Classrooms are facing cuts by the Sask Party, and that's not what people think of when they think of prosperity.
Hear, hear.
The funding formula cuts tens of millions out of dozens or a dozen school boards, and this budget only promises a one-time $10 million backfill top-up. People will be worried about the impacts in their neighbourhood: increased class sizes, reduced support, school closures. The losses for this year won't be covered, and every teacher, student, parent, and education worker is left to wonder, what about next year? Not to mention the big tuition increases post-secondary students are going to face as a result of this budget. This government is asking everyday families to pay more and accept less. The government is telling people that services and programs that they rely and depend on are going to disappear. And there's no doubt, Mr. Speaker, today's budget spells out clearly that school boards, health regions, and post-secondary institutions have been put on notice. They're being directed to finish the government's slashing and find further cuts. That means, Mr. Speaker, that everyday families can expect more cuts and impacts to be rolled out throughout the year. A specific concern for the opposition, Mr. Speaker, is the complete abandonment of the film industry, a significant economic and cultural contributor to our province. All of this will be lost, placing at risk our state-of-the-art soundstage and forfeiting jobs and opportunities for creative young people and entrepreneurs. We have grave concerns about the elimination of environmental programs, leaving nothing positive for those looking for some improvements in the way we treat our beautiful province.
That's right.
And we have deep concerns that this budget does nothing, Mr. Speaker, to close the gap between First Nations and Métis employment and non-Aboriginal employment levels, as well as nothing to close the education gap between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal students, something so important to our province. In fact, I'll share as a fact, Statistics Canada reported that First Nations unemployment rate is currently 20.5%. and that's an increase of 13.9% since the end of 2007. Mr. Speaker, cuts for our children in their classrooms, cuts in health services that we depend on, cuts to policing and public safety in our communities, cuts to our institutions of higher learning. It doesn't make sense, it isn't fair, and it wasn't what was promised. It seems that the interests of politicians are put first ahead of the needs and best interests of Saskatchewan people. It seems that a full staff complement in Executive Council offices, more politicians and more for the legislature is this government's priority.
Shame.
Nobody voted for that, Mr. Speaker, and it doesn't have to be this way. We have a resource boom and we are growing. We could focus our efforts to improve the lives of Saskatchewan people. That's smart growth, that's sustainable growth. We say there should be more for people, more for improvements. Improvements in the classroom, improvements in healthcare that we depend and rely on, improvements to housing so young families can fulfill their dream of owning a home. Mr. Speaker, budgets are about choices. Budget choices are a reflection of a government's priorities. Our province can do better than this, and our government should do better than this.
Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, budgets should also be about balance, especially financial balance. This government suggests that today's budget is balanced, a public relations line they've stuck with the past few years. But the government's own record suggests something else. Verified by the provincial auditor, this government has struggled to balance its books. They have now delivered 3 consecutive deficit budgets, and total debt, continues to grow. Today's budget looks like more of the same, and it's still racking up debt. As an area of caution, it would seem that this government is possibly, once again, betting too much on a large increase in potash revenues. If this rosy prediction does not pan out, this budget's foundation is damaged. And now, unacceptable accounting changes appear to be a continuing theme of the Sask Party government. The budget pushes $100 million of debt off their books and onto the books of universities and makes accounting changes that serve to manufacture desired, on-paper outcomes. At minimum, Saskatchewan people deserve the fair and true state of our public finances to be reported. It's about transparency, it's about accountability. This Assembly is filled today with many respected business and community leaders. I would guarantee that not one of them get to choose their own accounting policy, nor should government, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to join the independent voices like the provincial auditor in calling for change on this front, Mr. Speaker, change that would provide a fair and true state of our finances. Saskatchewan people deserve nothing less. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan people deserve the straight goods and the whole picture. For these reasons, Mr. Speaker, among others, we will not be supporting this budget. Mr. Speaker, we think people expected better. We think this is not the budget that people voted for in November. And we know that Saskatchewan people deserve better. Mr. Speaker, I'll have more to say on this budget and a more detailed analysis and critique in the coming days, but it's been my pleasure, my privilege, to join debate here today. And Mr. Speaker, at this point in time, I move that debate now be adjourned.
The member for